government, I believe, is going to pay without, I don't know if the cabinet know about it. Maybe Member Van Collett might know that the cabinet authorized the Prime Minister to send a letter to say that they are going to pay that loan. I don't know. But as far as I know, that never gonna cabinet. And now, here we are now. He then decided to send a letter to say that I pay, and he had no legal authority to do so. And he knew, because remember, we're going to court too. We took him to court when he's voting $1.5 billion and the Chief Justice said that it's illegal. That was a worthless promise that he made to Social Security. So to date, Madam Speaker and colleagues, neither Sunshine nor the government has settled any of these liabilities to the Social Security Board. As of June the 30th of 2024, Sunshine owes to Social Security Board the cumulative sum of $30,863,632.81. That is the Sunshine debt to Social Security, of which the Prime Minister back then, Dean Barrow, said the government and people of Belize are going to pay for. It's inclusive of the principal sum of $14,133,561.64 and accrued interest of $16,730,071 and 17 cents. Interest continues to accrue at the rate of 8.5%. Even then, that the Prime Minister could have at least say, we could reduce the interest rate. He kept it at 8.5%, what was being paid way back in 2004, 2006, during that time. Interest rates were down considerably. But even that he has the sense to think about. Still signed to pay 8.5%. This accumulates at a daily rate, Madam Speaker, of $3,291.38, which in effect comes up to over $1.2 million per year in interest alone. Again, notwithstanding the lack of any legal obligation on the government to pay Social Security, this PUP government intends to make Social Security whole and to finally settle this long outstanding Sunshine debt. We have no legal obligation to pay. But we believe we have a moral obligation to protect the workers' monies. Noting that the average interest cost of the government of Belize debt is a bit less than 3% per annum through the central bank, government has agreed with Social Security Board to settle the Sunshine debt on the following terms, subject, of course, to parliamentary approval. 1, GOB will fully assume the Sunshine debt of the $30,863,632.81, against which will be set off the full amount of the Social Security Board debt of $16,852,109.46 owing by Social Security to the government of Belize. Over the years, the Social Security accumulate a debt they owe to the government of Belize. In particular, when people get sick, the workers also government will pay them, and then Social Security is supposed to refund. And over the years, it went up to over 16 million. So we're going to set that off. So you deduct that from what we owe, and then so the total quantum would reduce. So then the residual net balance, in effect, is the sum of $14,011,523.35. And what we did did a slight adjustment downwards to round it off to 14 million, in effect, to be paid by the government of Belize, by the taxpayers of Belize, by the issuance to Social Security of Treasury notes upon the following terms. We're giving them a 5-year note of $4 million with an interest rate of 3% per annum, and a 10-year note of $10 million with an interest rate of 3% per annum. So we're paying off that expensive debt or interest at 8.5%, with debt at interest rates of 3%. These settlement terms ensure that Social Security Board does not have to book any impairment losses on its financial statements. For some time now, for several years now, the auditors are behind Social Security and said, we can't give you a full signed off because they know that that debt that they had on the books was not properly reflected or addressed. And so finally this year, the auditors said, well, we would not be able to sign off if we can't settle this. So I need to give credit to the chair lady and to their team being behind us. You know, we need to settle this to be able to close that ugly saga, that chapter with Sunshine Holdings. The only thing we can lament, Madam Speaker, is the incredible losses to the Belizean people that we have suffered under the hands of an incompetent UDP government. In other countries, people are going to jail for this. $30 million have been paid to the wrong hands. And now we, the government and the taxpayers and the people of this country, have to pay that $30 million. This $30 million, Madam Speaker, now reveals that actually the BTL nationalization has cost this country over $600 million without interest. $600 million and no interest. When you start to accrue interest, it's reaching $1 billion. And remember when he said that by 2020 or something like that, that BTL was going to be making $1 billion in profits? He actually said that in the National Assembly. Imagine what we could do with $600 million, man. Housing for the poor and for single mothers. More scholarships that you all are talking about for young people. Free education, NHI. There's so much we could have done with that money. Yes, well, and we're doing, yes, agree. But we are doing it because we are prudent managers. We have good people, and we listen to the experts. We don't know everything. I'm the first to tell you I don't know everything, but I listen to the experts. But you know what we have over here, apart from smarts? Common sense. That wasn't common in the previous government. There's so much that we could have done with this $600 million. And not because of sheer incompetence and hubris and arrogance of the UDP government, the people of this country have to pay $30 million to Social Security. Madam Speaker, in light of all the facts before us, I really look forward to an unanimous support on both sides of this House to be able to pay Social Security and give back the people, the workers of this country, back their money. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to facilitate the implementation of the terms of deed of settlement between the Government of Belize and the Social Security Board to settle and to set off certain debt obligations as between them that remain outstanding subsequent to Government of Belize's 2009 and 2011 compulsory acquisition and reacquisition Sunshine Holdings Limited, as well as the shares owned by Sunshine Holdings Limited in Belize Telecommunications Limited for the BTL Employees Trust, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I speak to both the Financial Services Commission Amendment and the Securities Industry Amendment Bill. Madam Speaker, I'll join them together as one because they're both related. And Madam Speaker, this basically is this to be able to regulate the securities markets to ensure that there's fairness, transparency, and investor protection. However, the challenges have emerged at the appeal process, particularly with the role of the Chief Justice in appointing chairperson of the appeals board, which would be through the Financial Services Commission. The proposed amendments, they seek to address these issues and to streamline the appeals process. The current reference to the appeals board under the Domestic Banks and Financial Institute Act has proven problematic as it limits the scope of appeals to matters related to the Domestic Bank and Financial Institution Act. So we propose eliminating this reference and instead using the appeals panel established under the Financial Services Commission Act. This will broaden the pool of eligible candidates for the chairperson role, ensuring timely and effective appeals. A transitional provision will ensure that any appeals initiated under the previous framework will continue unaffected. This ensures continuity and clarity for all parties involved. These amendments are necessary to ensure a more efficient and effective appeal process under the Securities Act and the Financial Services Commission Act. So I urge members of this Honorable House to support these changes that will strengthen our regulatory framework and foster greater confidence in Belize's security market.
Honorable members, those bills are referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Financial Services Commission Act, Act number 8 of 2023, to provide for the chairperson of the appeal panel to be the Chief Justice or Judge of the High, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Bill for an act to amend the Securities Industry Act, Act number 46 of 2021, to provide for appeals of decisions of the Commission to be made to the appeal panel under the Financial Services Commission Act, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
Prime Minister, may I ask, using Standing Order 91, given that we do have the young children with us, if we could move up the marriage bill for the introduction? Thank you. Thank you, members. So
Members, good afternoon. I rise, Madam Speaker, to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Marriage Act, Chapter 174 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to increase the age of marriage to 18 years, to remove provisions for consent to marriage of infants to be given by parents or guardians, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. This bill, of course, Madam Speaker, has the recommendation of Cabinet, and I won't be too long on the introduction of the bill this afternoon, Madam Speaker, but it really is a bill whose time has really absolutely come. And I stand here proudly this afternoon, and humbly also, Madam Speaker, to acknowledge the youth parliamentarians of last November who voted in their youth parliament overwhelmingly to raise the marriage age to 18 across the board without exceptions, so that if you're 16 or 17 with parental consent, you still can't get married. And Madam Speaker, I believe, I speak for myself now, that nobody under 18 should be allowed to sign a contract. I remember when we spoke in the consultations a little earlier this year, Madam Speaker, I said that you are married not because you go to church, but because you actually sign a contract. Let me take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, briefly, to first and foremost acknowledge the two youth parliamentarian representatives who have joined us since morning. Ms. Alyssa Bell, please acknowledge her. And I'm exceedingly proud, Madam Speaker, to say that Ms. Alyssa was the Minister of Human Development, Families and Indigenous Peoples Affairs in the Youth Parliament. Very proud of her. I also wish to acknowledge Youth Parliamentarian Gabrielle Cal. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you so very much. Ms. Shakira Sutherland is here, the Executive Director at our National Commission for Families and Children. We acknowledge also Program Coordinator of UNICEF, Ms. Nasa. Thank you for joining us. And of course, our Chair of the National Commission for Families and Children, Ms. Maria Elena Contreras. And of course, we are also joined today, Madam Speaker, by Chair of the National Women's Commission, Ms. Thea Garcia Ramirez. Madam Speaker, it's a proud moment, and I can safely say to the House of Representatives this afternoon and to the country that this bill has had tremendous acclamation and support, even from all the church leaders who attended the consultation at the Princess Hotel a month or two ago. I can recall personally Bishop Doric Wright, not Doric, sorry, Philip Wright, yes. God rest those who are in peace, no, yes. Bishop Philip Wright, we had Pastor Louis Wade, we had Miss Maria Zabane, we had Reverend Scott Giuliani, we had the gentleman from the Salvation Army, and we also had the gentleman from the Taiwanese Evangelical Church joining us for the consultation on that particular day, Madam Speaker, and giving full support to this bill. I must also take this opportunity to especially acknowledge Her Excellency Special Envoy Rosana Briceño, who played a seminal role in getting us to this point, Madam Speaker, and I really do ask us to give her some acknowledgement this afternoon. The Office of the Special Envoy, the National Commission for Families and Children, the National Women's Commission, all our offices and officers at the Ministry of Human Development, and I can say that there were consultations throughout the country, and again, I acknowledge all those who have taken part. Madam Speaker, I won't go into all the reasons why this is a good thing to do today, but one of the major points that I would simply like to acknowledge at this point, Madam Speaker, is that youth marriages and early unions only serve to perpetuate a cycle of poverty. We can speak on it more at the next reading, Madam Speaker, but I only ask for us this afternoon to support this when the time comes at second and third reading, and there has been strong consensus across Belize in favor of this bill. Ending child marriages and early unions will have a positive multiplier effect on promoting all the 5 strategies in our national gender policy to achieve gender equity and equality, and especially Sustainable Development Goal number 5, because it is girls more than boys who suffer the greatest when there are 2 early unions or youth marriages. And so I proudly and humbly, Madam Speaker, introduce this bill, and once again, I ask us to acknowledge all our visitors this afternoon who have played such an important role. I so move the first reading, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Health and Human Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Marriage Act, Chapter 174 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to increase the age of marriage to 18 years, to remove provisions for consent to marriage of infants to be given by parents or guardians, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, for now on the Income and Business Tax Amendment Bill.
Madam Speaker, I seek your indulgence to introduce all in one the Income and Business Tax Amendment Bill 2024, the Tax Administration and Procedure Amendment Bill 2024, the General Sales Tax Amendment Bill 2024, and the Stamp Duties Amendment Bill 2024, all as one. Bill for an Act to amend the Income and Business Tax Act, Chapter 55, the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to exempt certain employed individuals from chargeability or to income tax, to remove income tax deduction anomalies, to remove the tax on interest income on time deposits, to apply double taxation treaty relief provisions to all treaty countries, not just Commonwealth countries, to encourage UK pensioners to reside in Belize, to regularize withholding of tax on gross contract payments, to incentivize private sector support for sports and educational development in Belize, to make clarifying amendments and to provide for matters connected herewith or incidental to. The bill for an act to amend the Tax Administration and Procedure Act, Chapter 51 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to improve tax administration and enhance tax compliance, to enhance electronic tax invoicing, to make clarifying amendments, and to provide for matters connected herewith or incidental to. A bill for an act to amend the General Sales Tax Act, Chapter 63 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to enable electronic tax invoicing, to make clarifying amendments, and to provide for matter connected therewith or incidental to thereto. And fourthly, a bill for an act to amend the Stamp Duties Act, Chapter 64 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to exempt certain instruments from stamp duty, to make clarifying amendments, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental to. Madam Speaker, our government, my government, has embarked on a comprehensive tax reform exercise. As a part of this effort, I'm proposing to, as I said, to table these four bills: the Income and Business Tax Amendment Bill, the General Sales Tax, Stamp Duties, and the Tax Administration and Procedure Amendment Bill. This tax reform exercise undertaken by my government, it in itself forms a part of a broader policy objective to bring benefits and enable opportunities directly to the Belizean people. From the onset of this administration, we have been hard at work in encouraging and supporting the private sector, both the employer and the employed. In the case of the employer, while we have created incentives for large-scale investors to invest in Belize, we have targeted especially small businesses or MSMEs for support. We passed a new fiscal incentive law which provides extensive tax concessions to incentivize small businesses to join the formal sector and gain access to affordable credit from financial institutions. To that end, we have been able to secure substantial financing, including concessionary financing for the DFC, the $20 million that we just approved earlier today, for their on lending and or co-financing to small business, including small farmers, fisher folks, tour operators, and other tourism service providers. This includes the $30 million from the IDB, $10 million from Taiwan's ICDF, $56 million from CDB, $50 million from the World Bank, and even a $77.6 million from the Green Climate Fund. All of this money during our time we have made available to meet this goal. Female small business entrepreneurs have been an important beneficiary group, receiving over 70%. Listen, 70% have never been done before in this country. They have been receiving over 70% of all MSME loans. It's an incredible thing that we're making this available, targeting women who have always been at a disadvantage. Over 320 fisher folk has also benefited from over $2 million in loans. In the case of the employee, we prioritize the most income vulnerable workers on the 1st of January 2023, in spite of the naysayers, we raised the minimum wage by almost 50% to $5 an hour, directly increasing the take home to almost 40,000 workers. Can you imagine that? 40,000 people workers may get a pay raise just by raising the minimum wage. Moreover, the increase of minimum wage did not lead to increased unemployment. When they were saying, oh, we have to fire people, we can't afford it, what has happened? Like I said, a rising tide rises all boats. When you raise to $5, those that people are getting $5, they really have to go up. And that right now, level entry working, we're talking about $8 or $9 an hour. So everybody have been benefiting. I just still can't understand how the opposition could come on here and say they're not benefiting from the work we're doing. No, inflation is another matter. That's worldwide. That's not only Belize. The entire world have to deal with inflation. In fact, since 2023, we have maintained a historically low unemployment rate of 3%, from a peak of 13.7% in September 2020. Even the underemployment rate, listen to this, is at an all-time low, falling from 23.6% in September of 2020 to 2.5% this year, in April of this year. All of these people that could not get enough work hours for the month, for the week, now are working. That's something incredible. I could see the smirk in your face, but go out there and listen. Look at what people are talking to you. Now, mind you, am I saying now that these people are millionaires? Of course not. Am I saying that they should not get more money? Of course not. Of course they need to get more. And that's what we're doing here today with what we do work. But nobody could dispute the fact that today more people are working. Nobody could dispute the fact that today people are earning more than November of 2020. This is the fact. And nobody could dispute the fact that women are getting more loans for their small businesses than ever before under this government. And young people and young men. This is what we've been doing quietly, Madam Speaker. It's a transformation that has been taking place in this country. We have more work to do? Of course, we have a lot more work to do. But look at what we're doing and be a part of it. Join me, work together. Because when we do that, then the whole country benefits from that. Now, these tax reforms, Madam Speaker, these tax reform bills which I'm tabling here today, now speaks especially to the next rung of the employment ladder. Those hard-working, tax-paying Belizeans struggling to make ends meet. And we recognize that many of them are struggling. In the Income and Business Tax Amendment Bill is particularly relevant to this, that we're targeting a special group that we believe needs the most help. One of the most significant proposed amendments in this bill is to increase the $20,000 threshold below which no income are payable. Specifically, what we're doing now, we're increasing it to $29,000. So with this amendment, nobody that's earning under $29,000 will be required to pay income tax. When you look at the 2023 figures, and I remember back when the UDP, I think it was 2009 or 2010, they made the amendments. Oh, we said we're going to increase the threshold to 26,000. They tell you. But what they never tell you, that once you hit that, you start to pay tax at 20,000. So it's at 19,600. Then we are charade. And I remember pointing it out in the National Assembly. I worked several scenarios to show the then government that what you're doing, you're increasing the tax. You're not reducing the tax. I showed in some instances that when you get a pay raise, the raise that you get will be less than the tax that you'll have to pay. But they know everything. They know everything, so you could talk to them. So, Madam Speaker, what we're doing now, that using the 2023 figures, starting from 29,000 below, you don't pay tax. And I know you answer, we want to go to 50,000. Of course, we want to give 50,000. If we could get rid of the PAY, we'd get rid of it. And that's our goal sometime in the future. But we have to do it responsibly, in phases, as we continue to increase and grow the economy and improve our tax collection. So we're being responsible. This means, Madam Speaker, using the 2023 figures, that this amendment, an additional 2,851 employed individuals will no longer be subject to tax. These people will be taking home another $2.6 million increase in their take-home pay, or an average of $900 increase in net take-home pay per worker. That our pay raise, $900. Equally significant is the proposed amendment to adjust the deduction for employee income tax. The anomaly, as I mentioned, of employees' net take-home pay falling as a result of a salary increase due to the differing income tax deduction level is wholly unjust. We pointed it out back then in 2010, I think, when they made the amendments. But they know everything. They don't listen. So it is proposed to remove this anomaly so that in no instance will an employed person take home less pay when his or her salary is increased. Exactly. That, you know, a lot of workers, employers had to do. They had to pay them under the table, get them cash. Because the workers say, I don't take one pay raise if I have to pay more tax. So what does the employer do to try to keep them? They try to give them cash on the side and say, all right, CTS, you have to pay. Then think wrong, man. We need to fix it, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. So by introducing a varying tax credit, no less than 2,179 employed persons will benefit from a higher net take-home pay, cumulatively adding to over $2.5 million, Madam Speaker, to an average of $1,150 increase for them to take home per worker. Just this up. Altogether, over $5 million more will be placed directly into the pockets of over 5,000 hard-working Belizeans who will now enjoy an average increase in net take-home pay of over $1,000, many of whom I suspect will be public officers. Other amendments to the Income and Business Tax Act include: one, addressing the issue with a contract tax so that the taxpayer who files at 1.75% do not remain in a credit position. Two, you're going to encourage pensioners to retire in Belize under the Retired Persons Incentive Act, an amendment that will provide for such qualified retired persons who resides in Belize to elect to pay tax in Belize on all or part of their pension derived from the United Kingdom at a rate of 2% income tax. Three, to encourage the private sector sponsorship and contributions to sports and educational development in Belize. It is proposed to establish a business tax credit equivalent to up to $30,000 or 1% of the tax liability, whichever is lesser, of a taxpayer donor for such donations. Again, this was removed when Mr. Barrow was saying, oh, we give income tax relief. They removed that. So they removed any incentive for the private sector to be able to donate to sports and education. So here we are now trying to give that opportunity back. And despite all of that, there's still a lot of businesses that have been donating to the for sports and for education. But I believe that we need to encourage them to give and do even more where it is possible. Four, a number of clarifying amendments will also be introduced, including a clarification on the applicable tax of the DPAs. That is a 3% corporate income tax on its profits. On the General Sales Tax Amendment Bill, it generally focuses on enabling electronic GST invoicing, which is expected to be implemented towards the end of next year. At the same time, it also introduces numerous clarifying amendments. Of particular significance among these is the clarification that the exemption from general sales tax applies not only to sales of residential premises, like homes or condos, but also to lots to be used for residential purposes. This is what we try to do. It's important to listen. It could not be fair that a first-time property owner of $30,000 of a $30,000 lot should be subject to pay GST. Again, these are for the small people, my boy. We help them. If you buy one lot with less than 30%, $30,000, you're going to be exempted from GST. When you have people that buy $1 million condo, they have been exempted. So it's just right that we fix this. This is what we were elected about, to help the small people. And so this is what we're doing. Thank you. But I want you to vote in favor of it. The tax administration, yeah, vote for anything right now. The Tax Administration and Procedure Amendment Bill similarly seeks to enable electronic GST invoicing. It also empowers the Director General to waive both penalties and interest. This is effectively already done in practice, although strictly speaking and legally, the power does not reside in the Director General's hands. It also seeks to improve tax administration and enhance tax compliance by, among other things, providing for administrative penalties to be ordered. Finally, in the Stamp Duties Amendment Bill, it seeks to introduce a number of important amendments in the interest of fairness and equity for the more financially challenged and with a view to stimulate and enhance commercial activity. These include as follows. One, the exemption from stamp duty of mortgages, assignments, and cancellations of mortgages securing a sum of no more than $100,000. Again, this is for the middle class. So I say we want to remove any taxes on them with the cancellation of mortgages. You know, many of them, they pay the loan and then afterwards they realize that they still have cancellation that they have to pay. So we're saying that any mortgage of up to $100,000, they will not be required to be paying any taxes. In the case of such instruments, securing the sums of excess, therefore, the current applicable rates of stamp duty on such instruments will only apply to the relevant sums in excess of $100,000. So you only have to pay tax over $100,000, Madam Speaker. These adjustments are intended to support intended homeowners and small farmers. It will reduce the cost of doing business, reduce the cost of financing for personal, residential, and commercial purposes, and will be complementary to the efforts of the central bank to get the banks to reduce repayment penalties. These adjustments will minimize the barrier to mobility of mortgages, which will in turn incentivize banks to compete more on lending rates. Since you don't have to be paying these taxes if you want to move your loan from one bank to the next, because what the bank would do, one bank would give you the money to pay off Bank B, Bank A, but you have to pay the tax. Now that so most people don't do it because it comes out too expensive. By us removing that, now it will also require more competition amongst the banks to ensure that they don't lose that client with the loan that they have. Secondly, Madam Speaker, the exemption from stamp duty of transfer of property between companies where the beneficial owners of the transfer company and the transferee company are the same. Again, many instances, especially among families, and I'm sure that DPM get this every day, and myself, whereby I want to leave my property to my son, or to a family member, but they're telling you have to pay the tax. We are making sure we're working to exempt that from happening. Or in businesses, you have a company A, and then you restructure your company into company B, then this will allow you, because of the same owners, will give you the exemption from paying the stamp duties for the transfer of property. This provision supports the international financial services sector as it provides more flexibility in the use of a Belizean company as an investment holding company. 3, the exemption from stamp duty of transfers between immediate family members, a spouse, a common law, siblings, children, parents, from stamp duty. Again, there's been a clamor for an exemption from stamp duty of this nature, as I just mentioned, for many years, particularly since they are not commercial matters, but more in a nature of family planning. So you want to leave something for one of your children, you can do that now. And in many instances, because they don't want to pay the tax, they don't do anything. And then when the parent dies, then the family is at war as to who will get this thing. They fight up over it. And so with this instance now, because you don't have to pay the tax, the parent can immediately pass over whatever, or a son to the father, whosoever, they could be transferring these properties without having to pay stamp duty. Sorry? Oh. 4, the provision that in respect of the transfer of joint tenancy interest, only the portion of the interest transferred to a party other than transfer is subject to duty. Currently, there is an unjust application of stamp duty to the entirety of the transfer, even though only a portion of the interest is being transferred. So if we have this company, say it's worth $1 million, and I'm transferring my portion, if it's 50,000, they're required to pay on the whole amount. But we're saying no, all you have to pay tax is on the amount that you are transferring. The exemption from stamp duty also of agriculture and residential leases that are less than 2 years, or in respect of whose rent is less than $2,000 per month from chargeability of stamp duty. 6, the exemption from stamp duty on the vesting of property of a beneficiary on the death of a foreign landowner. 7, the exemption from stamp duty of any dealings with property, including transfers, mortgages, or other security interests in respect of property to or from a real estate fund with a paid-up equity capital of no less than $10 million, the equivalent of capital requirements for domestic banks, are duly licensed or registered under the Securities Industry Act. This adjustment is proposed to attract institutional capital, primarily foreign direct investments from large pension funds and foreign real estate investment trusts to invest in tourism, residential, commercial, and other real estate development projects in Belize. This provision would open the door to access to larger quantums of lower cost private capital. 8, the provision for different rates of tax on the transfer of shares of a Belizean company, 5% versus a foreign company, 7%. Transferring title to land in Belize to a foreign incorporated company allows for the ready avoidance or evasion of exchange control regulations, as well as taxes on future ownership transfers by moving the transactions to change future ownership offshore and beyond the scrutiny of local authorities. This provision will operate as a disincentive to hold land in Belize with foreign companies by reducing the cost of the future transfers, while at the same time promoting the use of Belizean companies and doing business in Belize. This will also have the likely effect of the re-domiciliation of many of these foreign landholding companies to Belize. Madam Speaker, this suite of tax reforms are long overdue. The benefits they bring will be well deserved by the targeted beneficiaries, including the hard-working employed, our small farmers, our low-rent tenants, and new intended property owners, and new intended homeowners, as well as sports and education. They also support key priorities, including the financial services, tourism, and BPO sectors, two sectors that are integrally connected to residential and commercial real estate development. With a multitude of benefits from these tax reforms, provided to the House, to the people of Belize. I proudly submit these bills to this Honorable House, and I look forward to the full support of its members. Madam Speaker, the Income and Business Tax Amendment Bill, the General Sales Amendment Bill, the Stamp Duties Amendment Bill, and the Tax Administration and Procedure Amendment Bill all have the recommendation of the Cabinet. Thank you.
Honorable members, those bills are referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Income and Business Tax Act, Chapter 55 of the Substantive Laws of Belize. Bill for an act to amend the Tax Administration and Procedure Act, Chapter 51 of the Substantive Laws of Belize. Bill for an act to amend the Sales Tax Act, Chapter 63 of the Substantive Laws of Belize. And the bill for an act to amend the Stamp Duties Act, Chapter 64 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, this is the Business Names Amendment Bill. I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Business Names Act, Chapter 247 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, and to make a certificate of registration valid for 1 year, to make clarifying amendments, and to provide for matters connected herewith. Madam Speaker, what we're trying to do here is to improve the accuracy and the efficiency of our business registry. Since the first business name was registered in the 18th of August of 1951, over 42 business names have been added. Many of these businesses are now inactive, so the registry is cluttered with a lot of these inactive accounts. So this is complicating our efforts to maintain a reliable records of active enterprises. We are focusing on two key challenges in these amendments. One, reducing the validity period of the certificate of registration from the current time frame to 1 year. Two, to issue a detailed extract upon renewal rather than reissuing a certificate. These changes are necessary to streamline processes at the Belize Companies and Corporate Affairs Registrar or the BCAR, and ensure that our registry reflects only active businesses. Maintaining an accurate registry is vital to Belize's compliance with international standards set out by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, and the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF. Madam Speaker, the Financial Services Commission, which is charged with the management and operation of our business registry, is committed to meeting these standards. An updated business registry enhances our system's integrity and builds trust in our economy, creating a more reliable resource of all stakeholders. By requiring annual renewals, we can effectively eliminate businesses that fail to remain active, which in turn preserves the registry's integrity. This also benefits financial institutions that can rely on accurate business information. Upon renewal, businesses will no longer receive a new certificate, but a detailed extract generated by the OBR. This extract will include a QR code linked to the OBRS system, following for real-time verification of the business's status. This approach mirrors the annual return process under the Belize Companies Act, reducing administrative burdens and enhancing accessibility. Madam Speaker, these amendments are not merely administrative. They are essential for enhancing the accuracy of our business registry, promoting active participation in our economy, and aligning with international standards. We promise to make doing business easier, and this is one more adjustment that will do so. So therefore, Madam Speaker, I urge all members of this Honorable House to support this critical initiative for the benefit of our businesses, our economy, and our community. Thank you.
All the members, that bill is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Business Names Act, Chapter 247 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to make a certificate of registration valid for 1 year, to make clarifying amendments, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce. I'm going straight to it. I rise to introduce amendment to the Designated Processing Areas Bill. As has become standard practice of this government, we endeavor to enhance the business environment and ensure that we foster the growth of businesses that create employment and generate exports. After extensive deliberations and consultations with stakeholders, we are introducing amendments to the Designated Processing Areas, or the DPA Act. We are convinced that these amendments will result in the following. 1, the continued development of the global digital services sector, which is a rebranding and upscale of business process outsourcing, or the BPO sector. Second, to incentivize and further support of the aquaculture sector. And third, to establish a special border entertainment zone. This will allow for the establishment of a special border entertainment zone at the Belize-Mexico border. More specific, this would be the area where the casinos at the northern Belize border with Mexico are located. The objective is to leverage on the success in attracting foreign tourists from Mexico by these casinos in the area to develop and promote other entertainment and recreational activities, and in so doing attract more tourists. Some of the added attractions we would wish to see there include bowling alleys, hotels, conference centers, concert venues, food courts, dance halls, spas, water parks, restaurants, events such as concerts, sporting events, festivals, competitions, sporting games, gaming, fashion shows, international transportation hubs, and so on. The new Mexican train line called Tren Maya will soon pass just a couple minutes away from this area, which allow Belize multimodal transport access to passengers and cargo from Belize. And I must say we are in constant discussions with Mexico to bring the Tren Maya to have a stop right now, right at the border, before we study how we can get it all the way to Tikal, working along with Guatemala and Mexico. So we need to plan to take advantage of these developments. So such an initiative will also complement entertainment and recreational services offered at the border area, and will be beneficial to the entire Corozal district and southern Quintana Roo. These DPA amendments aim to continue assisting the main growth sectors of the business processing outsourcing, BPOs, being upgraded to the global digital services and the aquaculture sector. One of the main amendments aim to incentivize the BPO sector to transition into higher tier services of the global digital services. It will allow companies in the sector to, 1, have a daycare facilities in their DPA designed areas to increase productivity. 2, transport vehicle for its workers. 3, to continue the work from home program by allowing the lending of duty-free items to any individual working for the company. 4, receive duty-free benefits for goods used as samples for the purpose of marketing or promotion. Many companies in the sector engage in the sale of goods that the agent needs to be acquainted with to promote to potential clients. You know, all of them vacuum cleaners and all kind of other products. I remember going to visit one and see they have a whole room of a lot of different equipment. Five, the expansion to occur through a legal arrangement that would give clearance almost immediately to expand designation when expansion of seats is needed due to the offering of new campaigns to foreign clients. And 6, establish a cybercrime working group for the sector. The aquaculture sector needs assistance to ensure its survival due to the early mortality syndrome, EMS. After consulting and receiving requests from the Shrimp Growers Association, the government will support the sector with the following. 1, reduction of the industrial roof space fee by 50%. And 2, allowed usage of fuel for tractors used to aerate and transport equipment and goods within the designated area. And 3, duty exemption of transport vehicles for its workers. The DPA program will have other amendments offered to all its beneficiaries. Madam Speaker, I look forward to the unanimous support of this initiative, which will bring much needed development, not just to the North, but to the entire nation. Thank you.
Honourable members, that bill is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Designated Processing Areas Act, Chapter 280 of the Laws of Belize to accommodate the continued development of the global digital services sector, to incentivize and further support the aquaculture sector, to establish a special border entertainment zone, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
Recognize the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, Education, Culture, Science, and Technology.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the National Culture and History Act, Chapter 331 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to strengthen the power of the National Institute of Culture and History, to protect and preserve resources in reserves, to standardize the definition of minister throughout the Act, to provide stricter penalties for offences, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. Very quickly, Madam Speaker, this really has 5 objectives. One is really cleaning up the Act, definitions, roles, responsibilities, some things that have been pending for many, many years. So cleaning up is an important objective of this amendment bill. 2 is we want to provide for an easier way of notices and amendments by Gazette. That makes it much more effective, much more efficient. So amendments. 3rd, increase penalties and fees. And this bill significantly increases penalties and fees, really to reflect the value and importance of our cultural heritage. We talk about it all the time. We have over the years, we've had a number of examples of destruction of sites and archaeological reserves and monuments. Everybody remembers the famous Namul incident in 2013. I think that's a good example of what we're trying to address. I think at the end of that whole thing, the damages assessed to that monument, which is really, there's no value you can really place on these things. But when they did an assessment, it was close to $1 million worth of damages to that monument. And I think the fees and fines, when they totaled it up, was like $16,000. Those were the fees and fines under the law that were payable. So that's the kind of thing we have to address. And so this bill seeks to address that issue, increase penalties and fees in specific areas for damages, penalties and fines. So there are significant increases. I think there's in one case, where the current fine is like $5,000, it goes to $100,000 or so. And for companies and so. Obviously there are, it has to be legally established. There has to be a legal process that's followed. So due process and legal responsibility has to be demonstrated. So that's one of the objectives. Another objective is to deal with squatting. It's an issue that has come up over the past probably 10 years or so. Prohibition against squatting on archaeological reserves. We've had a few challenges with that. I think the two most prominent ones that I can remember are the ATM caves, where somebody cleared 5 acres of land on that site, on that reserve, cleared it and put up structures on it. And then there was another incident, I think, with the Tapper Mountain Nature Reserve, where somebody gone in there and cleared 8 acres of land. And again, we're building structures on the reserve. And so under the Niche Act is silent on that issue. We have to put into the Act some legal authority to respond to these acts where people are squatting on land. So, that is one of the things the Act seeks to do. And then finally, the last objective is to give the Institute of Archaeology, NICH, the power to enter into co-management agreements. We have a number of sites where you work with other stakeholders. You have a number of caves, sinkholes, for example, that require better regulation, better management, that can provide revenue generation if we enter into some sort of co-management agreement. So in specific areas, under specific conditions, terms and conditions, that will provide for that to take place, as is done with many other reserves in the country. So those are really the 5 primary objectives, Madam Speaker. And of course, we'll have an opportunity to debate the bill when it comes up for second reading, and I'll be happy to clarify anything at that time. So I thank you.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Tourism, Archaeology and Information Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the National Culture and History Act, Chapter 331 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to strengthen the power of the National Institute of Culture and History to protect and preserve resources in reserves, to standardize the definition of minister throughout the Act, to provide stricter penalties for offense, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Madam Speaker, this is the Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital Authority Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce a bill for an act to amend the Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital Authority Act, Chapter 38 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to provide for independent union membership on the Board of Governors and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. Just very briefly, Madam Speaker, what we are trying to achieve here, this bill is to allow for the Board of Governors to have a composition of members that are objective and that no conflict of interest exists among the Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital Authority and its board members, so that the work of the board can be effective. I am sure, Madam Speaker, that when the bill comes back for second reading and debate, we will be able to provide more details after it comes back from the committees. Thank you.
Honorable members, that bill is referred to the Public Service, Labor, Industry and Trade Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to amend the Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital Authority Act, Chapter 38 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to provide for independent union membership on the Board of Governors and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I move that, as is rising today, the House adjourn to a date to be fixed by the Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that the House at its rising today adjourn to a date to be fixed by the Speaker. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Announcement by the Speaker.
Honorable members, before I get into the formal announcement, I am obliged to correct some statistics provided this morning. You will recall in my statement or in my announcement, I referred to the previous session as 2015 to 2019. It was 2015 to 2020, and that's the 12th session. And the statistics at the end of the last House meeting in 2020 for that session, number of House meetings were 43, but number of meetings, because you know there's a tendency sometimes to have meetings carry over, especially around budget time, was actually 47 that the staff had to prepare for. In 2020 to 2024 to date, which is the 13th session, there are 39 House meetings, and that statistics will be updated when this session expires. The number of meetings already as of to date is at 43, and those are those meetings that include the carryover, particularly for budget, either from 2 days to 3 days each year. It is important, members, that I correct the data because as the Speaker, I'm responsible not to provide misinformation or wrong information. And it's important that the data presented to members as well as the public are accurate and can be trusted. However, it does underscore the strain that the limited staff is under. And one of the efforts that we are trying to put in place is to collate and collect statistics of the House meetings for the House of Representatives. There are many other statistics that we're working on, and we'll be sure to update the House on that before the end of the year. Again, I sincerely apologize. It was not intentional, and I'm so very grateful that we caught the error before the end of the day. Honorable members, it has been agreed that the Caribbean Development Bank 9th Consolidated Line of Credit for the Development Finance Corporation Loan and Guarantee Motion 2024 and the resolution recommending the appointment of a person to act as Auditor General Motion 2024 be passed this day. As you are well aware, under Standing Order number 74, all proposed legislation, messages, petitions, motions, and other matters relating to the subject mentioned under the title of each standing committee shall be referred by the House to such committee for examination, consideration, and report to the House. The way for this to be done, other than by suspension of standing order, is for me to suspend the sitting to enable the Finance and Economic Development Committee and the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee to examine, consider, and report to the House on the motions. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The sitting is therefore suspended until the Finance and Economic Development Committee and the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee have concluded their business. I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Madam Speaker, I rise to lay on the table sessional paper number HR 276/1/13, report from the Finance and Economic Development Committee on the CDB 9th consolidated line of credit for the Development Finance Corporation Loan and Guarantee Motion 2024. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table. I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee.
Madam Speaker, I rise to lay on the table sessional paper HR 277/1/13, report from the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee on the resolution recommending the appointment of a person to act as Auditor General, General Motion 2024. Thank you.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table.
Public business, government business motions.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, with your permission not to repeat the recitals, I move, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied that this loan to the DFC would contribute to the social and productive sectors of Belize and impact poverty reduction by providing greater access to funding for the key targeted sectors of the economy. One, approves that DFC may borrow the said sum of $20 million US dollars from the Caribbean Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Board of Directors of the DFC to execute and deliver the loan agreement and other associated documents. Two, approves that all principal, interest, fees, premiums, and other charges under the loan shall be tax, fee, duty, or charge exempt as provided for in the loan and guarantee agreements. And three, further approves and confirms that the government may enter into a guarantee agreement with the Caribbean Development Bank on terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said guarantee agreement and all documents associated therewith.
Honorable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied that this loan to DFC would contribute to the social and productive sectors of Belize and impact poverty reduction by providing greater access to funding for key targeted sectors of the economy. One, approves that the DFC may borrow the said sum of $20 million United States dollars from the Caribbean Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Board of Directors of the DFC to execute and deliver the loan agreement and other associated documents. Two, approves that all principal, interest, fees, premiums, and other charges under the loan shall be tax, fee, duty, or charge exempt as provided for in the loan and guarantee agreements. And three, further approves and confirms that the government may enter into a guarantee agreement with the Caribbean Development Bank on terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said agreement and all documents associated therewith. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
With your permission not to repeat the recitals, I move, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House recommends that Ms. Maria Rodriguez be appointed to act as Auditor General for a period of 4 months with effect from 1st day of September 2024.
Honorable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House recommends that Ms. Maria Rodriguez be appointed to act as Auditor General for a period of 4 months with effect from 1st day of September 2024. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bills for second reading.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, this is the Customs and Excise Duties Amendment Number 2, Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, I move that the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48, the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to vary the rate of the duty for diesel oils, to provide for a new subheading for diesel oils, to increase the list of items subject to excise duty, and to provide for matters connected herewith or incidental to. Madam Speaker, in the introduction, I have given a fairly lengthy explanation of what we're doing. But basically what we're doing is to ensure that whatever diesel oils that come in, you have different categories. Now, like they have for instance, the biodiesel, and they have no diesel with less sulfur. We want to ensure that that all of them pay the same rate of duty to ensure that we can have fair competition. And I urge the support of all members of the House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize Leader of Opposition, member for Mesopotamia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You can't make up your mind, Honorable Prime Minister. You want a strong opposition, but then when I get up to give my contribution, you're the rail up. This is my job. I agree with you that we should increase the salary, but this is the job that we have to do. This is what we have to do. No, you need to hear what the people have to say. The farmers are not very happy with you when it comes to this, this diesel tax. Please. Madam Speaker, the irony is that we heard much talk earlier about conservation, the blue bond, and in this instance, you would think that this is a government that wants cleaner and greener. And so why would you be taxing biodiesel, which leads to cleaner and greener? You should be trying to incentivize people to be cleaner and greener, Madam Speaker. This proposed bill by the government to introduce a new tax on biodiesel represents a troubling shift in policy that will have far-reaching negative consequences for specifically the agricultural business productivity sector, Madam Speaker. By opposing this new tax, the government is effectively penalizing farmers, truckers, and producers who have invested in biodiesel technology, undermining their efforts to transition to greener and cheaper energy solutions. Makes absolutely no sense. This tax not only threatens the viability of biodiesel production, but also jeopardizes the productive sector. We have to bear in mind that the cost of fuel has never been higher. The Prime Minister talks about world market prices and how when they went down, the Barrow administration was still charging higher percentages. The world market, when it comes to fuel costs, has drastically reduced, Madam Speaker, yet we see no market reduction in the cost of diesel. So the farmers, the agro-productive sector have been innovative. In particular, the Mennonite community are one of the peoples that are known for this biodiesel production. And what happens is they have been cost saving by using the biodiesel, whether it's freight, transportation, other types of activities in the agro-productive sector that leads to less costs to consumers for different products, Madam Speaker. So certain communities, certain business people in the agro-productive sector and other sectors have found ways to get around the highest cost of fuel ever, in particular with the diesel as well. And that has led to benefits for them and the consumers. But now you have, I understand, Port Saul, some donors, some cronies complaining that this practice is undercutting their business. And that is why they're trying to put a stop to this, Madam Speaker. Farmers rely on biodiesel, Madam Speaker, to power their machinery at lower costs, and increased taxation will lead to higher operational expenses, which will ultimately be handed down to the day-to-day people that the Briceño administration claims to care so much about. So the irony, the conflict, the contradiction is they care about conservation, they care about the blue bond, but they don't care about cleaner and greener. I really am at a loss for words, Madam Speaker. In light of the recent drops in world market oil prices, the government has not and really should reconsider its approach to diesel pricing. Lowering diesel prices in tandem with the removal of the biodiesel tax would create a more equitable environment for all producers, regardless of their energy source. A level playing field would allow biodiesel to compete fairly with traditional diesel, incentivizing farmers to continue adopting renewable energy solutions without the fear of punitive taxation. This would not only support the agricultural productivity, but also align with global trends towards sustainable energy practices, which is what this government claims to be all about. Got $75 million from the Saudis to engage in these sustainable energy practices, Madam Speaker. It is essential for the government of Belize to remember that it came to power on a platform that promised lower fuel prices. The introduction of a tax on biodiesel contradicts this commitment and risks alienating the very constituents who supported these promises, Madam Speaker. By prioritizing the interests of the agricultural sector and the environment, the government can honor its electoral pledges while promoting economic growth and sustainability, Madam Speaker. It is time that the government keep fast to its word, Madam Speaker. The government promised that it would not have any new taxes. This is a new tax. Why would we be taxing a population that is already burdened by the highest cost of fuel, which has led to the highest cost of living ever, Madam Speaker? This is not the solution. The solution should be lowering the cost of fuel, especially for the agricultural sector that would benefit the people of Belize, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Speaker, respectfully, I'll not waste my time. This gentleman really don't understand what we're trying to do here. So, Madam Speaker, I ask the support from both sides of the House. Thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48 of the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to vary the rate of duty for diesel oils, to provide for a new subheading for diesel oils, to increase the list of items subject to excise duty, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48 of the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to vary the rate of duty for diesel oils, to provide for a new subheading for diesel oils, to increase the list of items subject to excise duty, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, this is the Movable Property Security Rights Bill 2024. I move the second reading for a bill for an act to facilitate the use of movable property as collateral for credit facilities, to establish the Office of the Registrar of Security Rights, and to provide for registration of security rights in movable property and for related purposes, and to provide for matters connected therewith and thereto, incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, I went already through an explanation the last time, but just to remind people that especially small businesses, the MSMEs, they don't have the collateral of a building or or land and so forth. So basically what we're trying to do now, what we're doing now, and for them to be able to get financing, basically you have to go to the pawn shop, you know, where they extort them with the price of interest that they have to pay. So by doing this now, we're setting up a registrar whereby these small businesses now can go and register their vehicle or the stock that they have and different assets that they may have covered that are movable. And so once it's registered, then that they can borrow on that. It's important to point out, Madam Speaker, and Minister of Education brought it up earlier this morning on the number of MSMEs in Belize. According to the Statistical Institute of Belize, MSMEs make over 90% of all the businesses, and they account roughly 50% of employment. These small little businesses employ over 50% of all the people in this country, and yet they are struggling to be able to get access to credit. So by implementing this law, Madam Speaker, the Movable Property Securities Rights, the bill into an act, it will open create a lot of opportunities for small businesses. And again, I urge the support of everyone. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition, Member for Metro
Thank you,
Virginia.
Madam Speaker. The opposition fully supports anything that can be done to help the small business community, the MSMEs, and so we look forward to more legislation that would create environment for MSMEs to have access to financing and to be able to flourish and continue to drive our economy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to facilitate the use of movable property as collateral for credit facilities, to establish the Office of the Registrar of Security Rights, and to provide for the registration of security rights in movable property and for related purposes, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill to facilitate the use of movable property as collateral for credit facilities, to establish the Office of the Registrar of Security Rights, and to provide for the registration of security rights in movable property and for related purposes, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I move the second reading for a bill for an act to recognize and acknowledge the formation and existence of the Finance Belize Limited as a private sector entity, not for profit, limited by guarantee, without share capital and non-political, to promote Belize as a financial services center, to grant it exemption from all taxes, duties, and other imposts, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental to. Madam Speaker, I've already explained earlier when we first introduced this bill, but it was held back in the House Committee because they wanted some clarification. The Finance believes what they're doing is that under the Financial Services Commission, they are charging a small fee that is put into a pool, and from that money is going to be used to be able to promote the more international services that we provide here in Belize. So far, it has been the government / the Financial Service Commission that would pay to do that. In other countries that have been having quite some success, what they've done, they've come up with this fee and they pass it on to a private group or to a group that belongs to the industry, so that they can go to these shows and to trade shows all over the world to try to continue to promote the work of Belize with these services that we provide, and also can do research to see what other new services we may be able to offer. But there was a little bit of, there was not enough clarity as to how this was going to set up. It was felt as if this is just money that's going to be given to a group and they can do as they wish without no sort of reporting mechanism and accountability of the monies that are going to be collected. And so the House Committee held it back to ensure that they can get more clarity, which is what they did after having meeting with members of the association. So what has been done now is that now the board is going to be set up by the Financial Services Commission. They are going to be selecting the members that are in the industry and meet the categories, the qualifications to be able to be on the board. And then the Ministry of Finance is going to appoint the chairman of of that committee, or the chair of that committee. And just as important, or maybe even more important, the monies that is used by Finance Belize now has to be audited yearly. And when the audit is finished, they pass it on to the Financial Services Commission, on to the Ministry of Finance, to Cabinet, and then it's going to be tabled in the House, all within a certain time, like within 3 months after the end of the audit. So in that sense, then, that this board would have to be able to account for every dollar that they get and how is it that is spent, and so that everybody can see what is being done. Once that was done, then the House Committee felt that they can proceed now for us to have the second reading and hopefully third, and then pass it on into law. Again, I urge the support of everyone. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill for an act to recognize and acknowledge the formation and existence of Finance Belize Limited as a private sector entity not-for-profit limited by guarantee, without share capital and non-political, to promote Belize as a financial services center, to grant it exemption from all taxes, duties, and other imposts, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to recognize and acknowledge the formation and existence of Finance Belize Limited as a private sector entity, not-for-profit, limited by guarantee, without share capital and non-political, to promote Belize as a financial services center, to grant it exemption from all taxes, duties, and other imposts, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, Education, Culture, Science, and Technology.
Madam Speaker, this is the Criminal Records Bill 2024. I move the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, Act number 11 of 2024, to repeal and replace provisions relating to automatic expungement, to allow for the automatic expungement of any conviction for a first offense for possession of cannabis or cannabis resin, and a first offense for any COVID-19 related offense, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the member for Caribbean Shores.
Thanks, Madam Speaker, and good evening, colleagues. I know it's been a very long day, but I just wanted to, not really, I just wanted to rise to lend my support to this amendment, Madam Speaker, that will positively impact some 3,500 individuals. As you know, Madam Speaker, it is this administration's mandate to pass meaningful and impactful legislation and criminal justice reform acts. And this falls right in line with that, because I think we can all say that we have a friend or a family member who has been adversely affected by two pieces of legislation, namely the Misuse of Drugs Act when it comes to the possession of cannabis, and particularly in instances where the fine is under $1,000. There are many individuals who have one offense on their criminal record, and we know how absolutely debilitating that can be for an individual and affects their ability to find gainful employment. It affects their ability to get a license or get a visa even. And they have this cloud that follows them throughout their lifetime, even though they only have one criminal offense, and that minor criminal offense of possession. And as you know, Madam Speaker, in 2020, the last administration and our administration, due to the health crisis that we were facing with the COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to introduce public health measures, safety measures, which resulted in various offenses. If you did not wear your mask, if you did not social distance, if you were in a large gathering of over 10 people. And so We all know individuals who had to face the consequences of that. Again, it's 3,500 individuals who have that one conviction, that one minor blemish on their records. And so this administration, Madam Speaker, thought it extremely important that we make amendments to the legislation that would automatically expunge their criminal records. And not only that, but as the Honorable Member for Freetown mentioned, we will also be advocating to the Governor General under her discretion under the Summary Jurisdiction Offences Act for her to remit all those penalties, because even though we are expunging their records for cannabis possession and for COVID-related offenses, there still exists in the magistrates' courts outstanding fines that have been unpaid. And we know, again, that cloud that follows individuals with unpaid fines, because if it is that you cannot pay your fine, the result, of course, is committal and ending up in prison. And I think it was Kamala Harris that said nobody should be in jail for smoking weed. So that is, again, also this administration's position, that when it comes to possession of cannabis, nobody should bear that type of consequence of ending up in jail. And so this is a very progressive amendment that is being made, and I lend my full support to it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition, Member for Mesopotamia.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I would be remiss as someone who has been involved in the criminal justice system as a 19-year-old youth that was in an unfortunate situation and maybe made some bad choices. So I know all about wanting a second chance. I know all about how one decision can change your life. And so I definitely support the government of Belize, this Briceño administration, in their criminal justice reform initiatives. I believe they're headed in the right direction. And I'd like to see more of a comprehensive look at people who have made mistakes, who have been involved in the criminal justice system, getting these types of opportunities. For instance, as I said, I speak from history. It was 26 years ago, 19, I'm going to be 46 in a couple weeks, and we see people still wanting to discriminate against me, still wanting to remind me of 26 years ago. So I'm happy to see that we have a government that is trying to right the wrongs and remove stigmas from people and give people the ability to integrate into society and function in society, because if you don't do that, you'll have people that will continue to commit crimes. As I always said, this is a great example of turning your life around, reforming, rehabilitating, and this is the message we should send to our society, that you are not condemned for life based on a decision that you may have made in a low point of your life. So I know that the Chief Justice is also engaged in a criminal justice reform agenda. So I do support this bill, and I do support the efforts of the government of Belize, and I would ask for more to look at all of the different examples of people who have gone, as again, I use myself as an example. I was arrested and charged and convicted once. I never arrested for anything one time in my life at 19 years old. So I'm sure there are other people in this country that have made one mistake and it has been 26 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. And I believe that we should look at comprehensive criminal justice reform, because justice is not just paying your debt and the victims getting the due justice that they need, but then justice is also reform and rehabilitation, as this bill speaks to. So I hope that you continue in this direction, and I applaud the effort. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Collett.
Just to add, Madam Speaker, as a long-standing representative of the South Side, many of our young males especially, but females too, are very happy to see this kind of legislation coming forward. So on their behalf, I stand to give my full support to this bill as well. Thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, Act number 11 of 2024, to repeal and replace provisions relating to the automatic expungement, to allow for the automatic expungement of any conviction for a first offense for possession of cannabis or cannabis resin, and a first offense for any COVID-19 related offense, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, Act number 11 of 2024, to repeal and replace provisions relating to automatic expungement, to allow for the automatic expungement of any conviction for a first offense for possession of cannabis or cannabis resin, and a first offense for any COVID-19 related offenses, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is the Misuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2024, related to the Criminal Records Bill. I move the second reading of a bill for an act to repeal provisions relating to the expungement of certain convictions and to provide for matters connected therewith or in.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to repeal provisions relating to the expungement of certain convictions and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to repeal provisions relating to the expungement of certain convictions and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Madam Speaker, this is the Global Fund Privileges Immunities Bill 2024. I move the second reading of a bill for an act to provide privileges and immunities to the Global Fund, the persons who are representatives constituting the organs of the Global Fund, officials acting in the interests of the Global Fund, members of the Global Fund Technical Review Panel, members of the Global Fund Technical Evaluation Reference Group, and experts on missions in the interest of the Global Fund in the fight against AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition, Member for Mesopotamia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Member from Freetung, maybe you can just clarify in the parliamentary caucus meeting held this week, UDP parliamentary caucus meeting, there were some questions as to has something happened in the past that we don't know about, whereas there is a need for this type of immunity. We know that we have seen instances of, remember the British soldier and people from other embassies that may have either assaulted or I think there was an accident where a Belizean lost their life, or a few Belizeans lost their lives. So we'd just like to know what is the impetus of the need for the immunity. Thank you.
Recognize the Honorable Member, Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, Leader of the Opposition. No, really, the impetus is that I think it was a policy decision of the Global Fund themselves, a policy decision that they made. I think they had been asking for this sort of privileges and immunities in certain countries, and I think there was a policy decision that they should ask for it in all countries now. So this is a global organization that works all over the world, fighting AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and I think maybe their experiences in certain countries, not in Belize, but their experiences in certain countries made them believe that it's important for their members to have this kind of immunity. We've had no experiences with them here in Belize in terms of any that would cause for this kind of thing. So I think it was just a a policy decision at their level, at their board level, and we are happy to oblige because they do so much good work in many countries across the world, and we certainly want them to support that work in Belize. So.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill for an act to provide privileges and immunities to the Global Fund and to persons or representatives constituting the organs of the Global Fund, officials acting in the interests of the Global Fund, members of the Global Fund Technical Review Panel, members of the Global Fund Technical Evaluation Reference Group, and experts on missions in the interest of the Global Fund in the fight against AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to provide privileges and immunities to the Global Fund and to persons who are representatives constituting the organs of the Global Fund, officials acting in the interest of the Global Fund, members of the Global Fund Technical Review Panel, members of the Global Fund Technical Evaluation Reference Group, and experts on missions in the interest of the Global Fund in the fight against AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Committee of the Whole House on Bills.
Honourable members, the House will now resolve into a committee of the whole House to consider the bills that were read a second time. I would like to ask any visitors in the gallery to leave during this portion of the sitting.
for an act to appropriate further sums of monies for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day of March 2025. I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day of March 2025 be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day of March 2025.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Customs and Excise Duties Amendment Number 2 Bill 2024 and passed it with amendments. I now move the third reading of that bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48 of the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to vary the rate of duty for diesel oils, to provide for a new subheading for diesel oils, to increase the list of items subject to excise duty, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, as amended, be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48 of the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, to vary the rate of duty for diesel oils, to provide for a new subheading for diesel oils, to increase the list of items subject to excise duty, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Movable Property Securities Rights Bill 2024 and passed it with amendments. I now move the third reading of that bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to facilitate the use of movable property as collateral for credit facilities, to establish the office of the Registrar of Security Rights, and to provide for the registration of security rights in movable property and for related purposes, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to facilitate the use of movable property as collateral for credit facilities, to establish the office of the Registrar of Security Rights, and to provide for the registration of security rights in movable property and for related purposes, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that
Correct.
the Committee of the Whole has considered the criminal I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill 2024 and passed it without amendment. I now move the third reading of that bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, Act Number 11 of 2024, to repeal and replace provisions relating to automatic expungement, to allow for the automatic expungement of any conviction or a first offense for possession of cannabis or cannabis resin, and a first offense for any COVID-19 related offense, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, Act Number 11 of 2024, to repeal and replace provisions relating to automatic expungement, to allow for the automatic expungement of any conviction for a first offense for possession of cannabis or cannabis resin, and a first offense for any COVID-19 related offenses, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are all tired. Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the finance beliefs and I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Finance Belize Recognition and Exemption 2024 bill and has passed it with amendments. I don't move the third reading of that bill.
Apologies on that, Prime Minister. Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to recognize and acknowledge the formation and existence of Finance Belize Limited as a private sector entity not for profit, limited by guarantee, without share capital and non-political, to promote Belize as a financial services center, to grant it exemption from all taxes, duties, and other imposts, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, as amended, be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to recognize and acknowledge the formation and existence of Finance Belize Limited as a private sector entity, not for profit, limited by guarantee, without share capital and non-political, to promote Belize as a financial services center, to grant it exemption from all taxes, duties, and other imposts, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Misuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2024 and passed it without amendment. I now move the third reading of that bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to repeal provisions relating to the expungement of certain convictions and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to repeal provisions relating to the expungement of certain convictions and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Global Fund Privileges and Immunities Bill 2024 and passed it without amendment. I now move the third reading of that bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to provide privileges and immunities to the Global Fund and to persons who are representatives constituting the organs of the Global Fund, officials acting in the interest of the Global Fund, members of the Global Fund Technical Review Panel, members of the Global Fund Technical Evaluation Reference Group, and experts on missions in the interest of the Global Fund in the fight against AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to provide privileges and immunities to the Global Fund and to persons who are representatives constituting the organs of the Global Fund, officials acting in the interest of the Global Fund, members of the Global Fund Technical Review Panel, members of the Global Fund Technical Evaluation Reference Group, and experts on missions in the interest of the Global Fund in the fight against AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
Recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House now do adjourn. And before that, Madam Speaker, I just want to make this point that to ask the Belizean people to be calm, not to, and because of the impending storm this weekend, it basically is going to be mostly rain, and especially in the north. And basically what NEMO is asking the general public is to update your family and your business, your emergency plans, to be prepared during, and to put them into action, check that you have food and so forth. Because most of the flooding is not going to be rain or anything, stuff like that, no? Shelters have been identified in the Corozal District, Oranjewak District, Belize District, and San Pedro that will be open if required. And so, and the public is also advised to make sure, try to clear the drain in front of your house to try to reduce any kind of flooding at this time. And also the people in agriculture and fishery sector again to monitor closely this storm. So again, mostly lots of rain that we're going to be having here, more in the north of the country. But I'm just asking everybody, let's be careful. If you don't have to be on the road, try to stay home and not drive in wet conditions. So I think, I'm sorry. The convention is moved to, so the convention will be moved to the civic. And the minister, you support? The minister is going to support you, so it will be fine. No? So shall I make the announcement, Phil? The UDP, the UDP or which party? The UDP Unity Convention is going to be now at the Civic Center in Belize City. So that's a public service announcement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition member for Mesopotamia.
It gets no better than this when you have the Prime Minister announcing a convention, the PUP Prime Minister, that tells you all that you need to know, bought and paid for by the People's United Party. But, Madam Speaker, if you would allow me, today is a holiday. It's called Sukkot. It's the harvest, festival of harvest. So we do have a Jewish community here in Belize, and I'd like to wish them. No, we do. You could ask your colleague from Orange Walk South. The colleague from Orange Walk South is always kind enough to facilitate our kosher food and the different things that we need. I'd also like to acknowledge Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Madam Speaker. My stepmother is a survivor, and my aunts and grandmother passed away from cancer, so I wish everyone well in the endeavor to make it more on the conscience of the Belizean society for preventive measure, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue of national importance, Madam Speaker, I always go back and it's the issue of PC Santiago Jr. And I always go back and forth with the Commissioner of Police and the Minister of Police. Nothing personal, it's a matter of oversight. But let it never be misinterpreted as lack of support for the Belize Police Department. Madam Speaker, our police officers are honorable. The majority of them serve and protect us with distinction, Madam Speaker. And I'd just like to bring to the attention of the government the issues that have been raised by the Belize Police Association, Madam Speaker, as far as the continuous, quote, cowardly acts and attack by the Social Security Board upon the fallen PC Santiago, affectionately known as Santi, Madam Speaker, and his grieving family. The Police Association has been very upset and aggrieved, and they say that this is also a direct assault towards the brave men and women of the police department who continue to wholeheartedly serve and protect our citizenry against crime, yet continuously meet roadblocks constructed by Social Security whenever it is time to claim benefits, Madam Speaker. In this recently cowardly act, rather than using the recent outcry of the public against the protocols of SSB that the family believes led to the death of PC Santi, rather than adjust those protocols that they have in place for insurers as a means of making effective change that would benefit the insured, the SSB has once again deflected from its shortcomings and chose to attack the integrity of fallen PC Santi and his family, suggesting through its language that it was Santi who was receiving benefits he may not have been entitled to. To add salt to our wounds, whilst the department and Santi's family are still grieving the untimely loss of their dearly beloved brother, the SSB went on to speak of benefits which the family received, as if though the collection of this benefit was somehow a gift or was supposed to keep his family quiet about Santi's demise. However, this trickling benefit was not a gift, Madam Speaker. This was an entitlement. This was due to PC Santi. Santi contributed monies towards Social Security for over 17 years, Madam Speaker, without having a choice. His monies contributed towards the $87 million that the SSB boasts about having. I concur that we always hear that the SSB has they need to spend the money. They have a $100 million problem that they need to get rid of the money. So you would presume that logic and compassion would guide their actions in making sure that all Belizeans that are paying towards their Social Security, retirement funds, and benefits would get that when they're most in needs. And PC Santi's money surely contributed towards the millions that have been given out as unsecured loans at Social Security and remain unrecovered and unpaid. Right now, we're getting ready to pay $30 million, is it, for Sunshine debt. So rather than deflect, the SSB should embrace and work towards earning the trust of the insurers. They're obligated to assist, Madam Speaker. It is the insurers' money, as I always say, not the government's money, not SSB's money, Madam Speaker. Rather than casting blame, SSB should accept its shortcomings and move to eliminate its antiquated protocols from yesteryears and strive to become a more efficient organization that will benefit the people that are paying their contributory funds. And instead of assaulting the defenseless, Madam Speaker, SSB should move towards forging a partnership aimed at removing impediments which oftentimes rob our brothers and sisters of their entitlements. We therefore join the Belize Police Association in imploring the SSB and asking the government to join with us to desist from further cowardly acts against Brother Santiago, Santi as he's affectionately known, as he is no longer here to defend himself. And it is painful enough on the Belize Police Department as well as the family, Madam Speaker. Brother Santi died as a hero, serving his country, our country, to the bitter end. He died asking for a pittance when compared to the $7 million SSB finds itself so easily spending to assist friends and cronies alike. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, PC Santiago died with his integrity intact, and we would hope that the SSB would respect that integrity and demonstrate some compassion in this time of grievance for the family, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It would have been a good statement if you'd have just removed from the personal attacks. I agree that the Social Security Board could have displayed more empathy on the loss of PC Santiago. I don't think that there was any ill intent or wanting to rob anybody of their entitlements. On Monday, I will speak to the CEO to give me a full briefing as to what has happened, and so and so that we can inform the PC Santiago and his family as to what really happened. But at the same time, Madam Speaker, Social Security Board, they also have a responsibility. I'm not talking about this instance, but to manage globally the fund that we have, because that fund belongs to all of us. And whilst it may not be a lot for each individual, when we put it together, it's a lot more than what we put into the fund. And so it's important for us to be able to keep that in mind. But again, if there was a delay in providing the funding to PC Santiago, what was supposed to be given to them, it's unacceptable. We find the same thing here in government when people are retired and because the records are not properly kept, or they do not fill in the proper forms, we take too long to be able to give them what belongs to them. So from that end, there's absolutely no excuse, and I agree with you, leader of the opposition. So again, I would take I will ask for a report and to ensure that the Social Security, the people at the Social Security have more empathy with the people that they are serving. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The House now stands adjourned.